Greetings all, Ferrariman601 here. Welcome to the live commentary stream for the 2018 Hungarian Grand Prix. The Hungarian Grand Prix weekend is among my favorites on the calendar. It is the final race before Formula One's traditional summer break, but also it happens to be one of my favorites. Hungary is quite the unique circuit. It is very small, very compact. A lot of people liken it to Monaco without the houses. We have quite the interesting starting grid for this Monaco without the houses Hungarian Grand Prix today. The green flags will drop in just about 11 minutes. Here is how the drivers line up on the grid. In a wet qualifying session yesterday, Lewis Hamilton figured out the lines best of anybody. He lines up in pole position. He is followed by his teammate Valtteri Bottas in P2. Mercedes lock out the front row. P3 for Kimi Räikkönen in the first of the Ferraris. It had appeared for quite a while that Räikkönen got the combination right yesterday in qualifying and would be on pole. However, Hamilton and Bottas pipped him at the end. P4 for Sebastian Vettel, teammate to Kimi Räikkönen, Ferraris on that second and third row of the grid. P5, Carlos Sainz in the Renault. He had a surprising qualifying session yesterday. P5 for the young Spaniard. P6 for Pierre Gasly of Toro Rosso. Again, another surprise up there in the high midfield. P7, Max Verstappen. Qualifying yesterday had Verstappen written all over it in terms of its conditions, but Verstappen only good enough for P7. P8, Brendan Hartley in the second of the Toro Rossos. P9, Kevin Magnussen of the Haas team. He is followed in P10 by his teammate Romain Grosjean. Haas, they may not be the fastest, but they are definitely among the most consistent. They are quite consistently around the P7 through P10 range week in and week out. P11, Fernando Alonso in the first of the McLarens. Not enough power to make it into Q3 yesterday, and also not quite the right strategy calls. Alonso on the radio at the end of Q2. The team asked him, which tires do you want? Alonso says, whatever you want. We're not going to make Q3 unless you put a rocket on the back. P12 for Daniel Ricciardo in the second of the Red Bulls. Disaster, really, for the Australian yesterday. P12 is his teammate Verstappen in P7. Well, that's a Q3 finishing position. Ricciardo, he didn't make it there. P13 for Nico Hülkenberg in the second Renault. 14th for Marcus Ericsson in the first of the Saubers. He's followed in P15 by Stoffel Vandoorne in the second McLaren. Charles Leclerc in P16. Leclerc not having the best last couple of weeks. He had that very spectacular spin at turn 1 at Hockenheim toward the end of the race, and today he's starting in 16th. P17 for Esteban Ocon in the second Force India, followed by the first Force India, P18 of Sergio Perez. Force India officially entering administration yesterday. P19 for Sergei Sirotkin of Russia in the first of the Williams cars. He is followed in P20 and last by Lance Stroll. It appears that Stroll will be starting this race from the pit lane. However, we'll have to wait and see for that. How is everybody today? Thank you very much for joining me. Welcome back. Yes, again, I'd just like to extend the welcome to everybody, whether you're a first-timer or you are a stalwart fan. Thank you once again for joining us here today. Bags Kings, welcome. Just so that everybody is clear, I know that you all know this already. However, for our newcomers, I just want to make it clear that this is a commentary stream. I am not allowed to show you real-world Formula One content, ergo I cannot. However, I am not at all barred from talking about it, so that's exactly what we'll be doing here today. This is a play-by-play commentary. If you are in a position to strategically position yourself between your chosen form of media consumption in terms of the race itself and the sound of my voice, I do recommend that you do so. This 10-minute gap between the top of the hour and the start of the formation lap just gives us a little bit more opportunity to get things settled. Romain Grosjean there talking to Sky Sports on the world feed just before he heads over to the grid. Camera's now picking up Lewis Hamilton. He has gotten himself into the Mercedes. Already appears to be a rather hot day there in Hungary. Yesterday with qualifying, it was a little bit difficult to get a sense of the ambient temperatures because of all the rain. However, Hamilton already appears to be sweating, just sitting still in the car. I also see his water bottle on top of the monocoque, lots of condensation around it. So it appears to be hot and humid in Hungary. Bad Kings, in answer to your question, in the live chat that you're in now, unfortunately it does not accept any URLs or hyperlinks. So that's a no, unfortunately. That's a YouTube rule. In any regard, storylines for today's race. The Mercedes got it all right yesterday in qualifying, but it was wet. If you're good in the wet, it doesn't necessarily mean you're good in the dry. Ferrari have had the fastest car all weekend when it was dry. When it was wet, Mercedes, they came to the fore. We have a dry race today, at least at the start. Is it possible to see Raikkonen and Vettel pull off a miracle into turn 1, lap 1, and overtake both of the Mercedes cars? It's somewhat possible. We could definitely expect both of the Mercedes to be running defensively into turn 1. They have nothing to fight for at the start in terms of overtaking, but they do have to defend their positions. We'll see how that gets on. Turn 1 here in Hungary, it has been a host to several incidents in the past, particularly before the 2004 event when they had significantly lengthened the run down to turn 1 and widened out the apex of the corner a bit. But I do remember in the 2005 race, right at the start, it was Felipe Massa who got into the Red Bull of Christian Klein and catapulted him through a barrel roll, so that was quite fun. Of course, the 2006 version of this race, that led to a first-time Grand Prix win for Jenson Button. It was also the first time the Hungarian Grand Prix was ever held in the rain. 2008 was a similarly interesting affair. Very big championship implications for 2008. Felipe Massa dominated the day. 3 laps to go. The engine in the back of his Ferrari quit, and that handed the win to Heikki Kovalainen, then driving for McLaren, Kovalainen's only Grand Prix victory. We could see some spectacular displays here today, and we'll find out in just about 4 minutes. Iona. That is incorrect. Passione in Italian is feminine. Molta passione. Sorry, I just had to do that. Language geek problems. Anyway, Sky Sports, they're going through the grid lineup there. Again, unchanged from what we went through. We've also seen the tire allocations here for the starters. It appears that everybody from position 1 to position 19 will be starting on either the Ultrasoft or the Soft compound. We have our top 3 starters on Ultrasoft, Softs for Vettel and Sainz, back to Ultrasofts for everybody from Gasly through Grosjean, Alonso through Hulkenberg on the Softs, Ericsson on the Ultrasoft, Van Dorn through Ocon on the Softs, Perez on Ultrasofts, Sirotkin on Softs, and then Lance Stroll, I believe, starting from the pit lane on mediums. Yes, the story on the Ferrari exhaust, it's still not entirely clear what they're doing, but if you take a look at some pictures from Germany, you will see the exhaust configuration. Ferrari have been running a 3 across the bottom exhaust so far since really the beginning of the turbo hybrid era, where you have the main outlet pipe on the back of the turbine. That's the larger pipe in the center of the bodywork, pointing rearward under the rear wing. And then you have 2 small bleeder pipes. Those are the wastegate exhausts. Ferrari took those wastegate exhausts. They had been positioned on either side of the primary exhaust, and they stacked them on top vertically of the primary exhaust. The idea is that they think they can get more air through the turbocharger while the drivers are off throttle and sort of send an air charge through those wastegate exhausts to blow the underside of the rear wing. It's a marginal downforce gain, but it is still a downforce gain. Meanwhile, here in Hungary, drivers are all in their cars. The engines have been started. The mechanics are just removing the tire blankets from most of the cars now. They have about 15 seconds more before they must vacate the grid, which they shall all do, of course, in absolutely record-breaking fashion. I'm surprised they don't break any Olympic sprinting records during the F1 weekend. Getting a look at the Ferrari of Sebastian Vettel, some of you may have noticed there is a black stripe running across the top of the monocoque on both Vettel's and Raikkonen's cars. That is in tribute to Sergio Marchionne. He was the head of the Fiat Chrysler group. He unfortunately departed this earth earlier on this week after a short battle with a chronic illness of some sort. Ferrari, of course, showing their respect to their former boss. The master clock has ticked to 10 past the hour. The formation lap has come underway here in Hungary. It appears that everybody who will be getting away has gotten away. Field making their way through turns 2 and 3 at this time. Again, it does not appear that we've had any incidents on the formation lap. Everybody has come away cleanly. On board with Sebastian Vettel briefly there on the formation lap, just bringing the Ferrari up to temperature. All the drivers, of course, will be working their tires and brakes very hard on this formation lap. Tires and brakes in a Formula One car, of course, very sensitive to temperature. However, at the same time, they'll have to make sure the engines don't get too hot. Lewis Hamilton leading the field into the penultimate corner of the lap right now, through Sector 3, on board with Carlos Sainz in the 5th-placed Renault. 5th place for car 55. I'm sure he's enjoying the novelty of that a little bit. Looking at the Ferrari of Sebastian Vettel immediately ahead. World Speed Cameras very briefly there, bringing up Toto Wolff in the Mercedes garage. This is a very tense time if you're a team principal. Maurizio Arrivabene looking on the Ferrari pit wall there, looking equally tense. And there is the number 18 Williams of Lance Stroll just getting out of the garage. He will start the race from pit lane. There's a little fake grid slot at the end of the pit lane there, just in front of the red light. Stroll will sit there and he will wait for the field to pass after the race actually starts. Lewis Hamilton going through his pre-start procedure there in P1. The green flag is up at the back. Medical car in position. Here come the lights for the 2018 Hungarian Grand Prix. Don't blink. Lights are out, and away we go. Looks like a good start by Lewis Hamilton, and an equally good start by Kimi Räikkönen, who is sliding in behind Valtteri Bottas into turn 1. Bottas playing the rear gunner for Hamilton into turn 1. It does not appear that the Ferraris will be able to make a move on the Mercedes through the first corner. However, Räikkönen is ahead of Vettel at this point as we go to turn 2. Bottas covers the inside line. And, as he's entitled to do, he maintains the position. Sebastian Vettel, though, has now overtaken Kimi Räikkönen, looking somewhat opportunistic through turn 3. Turn 4 is a very fast left-hander. I don't think any moves will happen through there, at least not at the front of the field, and indeed, they do not. Everybody holding station now through turns 4 and 5. The order is currently Hamilton, Bottas, Vettel, Räikkönen, Verstappen, your top 5. Heading through the chicane in Sector 2, some jockeying for position in the midfield there. That was Pierre Gasly and Kevin Magnussen, I believe. And the Ferraris now, both of them in hot pursuit of each other as well as of the Mercedes. The Ferraris are sticking with the Mercedes through the end of Sector 3 and the completion of lap 1 of 70 here. Having some jockeying for position at the back of the field there. We'll have to wait for timing and scoring to shake itself out at the end of lap 1. Lots of position changes, of course. We need the computer to catch up with itself. But at the end of the first lap, it is Hamilton from Bottas, Vettel, Räikkönen, Verstappen, Gasly, Magnussen, Sainz, Hartley, and Hülkenberg, your top 10. The big loser in all of that, Carlos Sainz, he started 5th. He is now in 8th. Red Bull Radio, Daniel Ricciardo saying, I don't know if I have damage. There was some sort of contact happening there between Ricciardo and somebody else. And, are we seeing Charles Leclerc out of this race already? Indeed we are. That is the Sauber pulled off the circuit that appears to be somewhat near the pit lane. But Charles Leclerc, his head in his hands, he is not happy with what's going on. No apparent damage on the Sauber, but Charles Leclerc out of the Hungarian Grand Prix, it would appear. World Feed picking up Sebastian Vettel going through the penultimate corner at the end of Sector 3 at the end of lap 2. Vettel is just about 1.6 seconds. Now 1.4 seconds behind Valtteri Bottas for second place. There's Charles Leclerc. He's climbed out of the car and walking back to the pit lane. Fastest lap currently held by Lewis Hamilton. That was a 1:23.184 last time by. His teammate Valtteri Bottas in second place did a 1:23.788 last time by. So Hamilton about 0.5, roughly half a second and a little bit extra ahead of his teammate per lap. The gap between Vettel and Bottas, as we mentioned, 1.4 seconds. Remember, you need to be within 1 second of the car in front in order to take advantage of the DRS drag reduction system, the slot gap on the rear wing, which Race Control has just coincidentally engaged. World Feed showing us a replay of the start there. Decent starts by both of the Mercedes and both of the Ferrari. Sebastian Vettel managing to get around Kimi Räikkönen in turn 2. However, neither man able to make any inroads on the Mercedes in front. Just taking a look at Sebastian Vettel's steering wheel here. He's in a very aggressive launch map, no doubt there. Just looking at the center Manettino logo there. Meanwhile, on board in replay with Carlos Sainz, lots of brakes. Lots of heat in those brakes. There's smoking on the grid. That's not all that unusual. Sebastian Vettel moved over quite aggressively on Carlos Sainz off the start, but he left him room. Fair play to both men. And what is this? There was the contact there. It was Carlos Sainz and it appeared to be Max Verstappen making contact there. Right front of Sainz to left rear of Verstappen. No real damage that I could see. Marcus Ericsson getting punted into the air briefly. I didn't quite catch who that was. And now on board with Danny Ricciardo, there's one of the Haas cars. Oh, yes, there was big contact there. It was Ricciardo, and the field of view of the camera wasn't quite right. Was that Stoffel Van Dorn who got into Ricciardo? Nope, it was not. It was Ericsson, Marcus Ericsson getting into Daniel Ricciardo there. Ricciardo's left rear to Ericsson's right rear, and there was more contact there at the end of turn 1 between the Force Indias, I do believe. So, no big incidents at the start, but plenty of small ones. Race Control has announced DRS enabled. Good on you, Race Control. We'll see them using that down the start-finish straight as well as out of turn 1. Working lap 5 of 70, the order in our top 5 unchanged. Hamilton from Bottas, Vettel, Raikkonen, and Verstappen. Some movement going on in the mid-pack, though. Kevin Magnussen up 2 spots into P7. Carlos Sainz has dropped 3 spots, as we mentioned before, to P8 at this time. Brendan Hartley down 1 into P9. P10, now Nico Hülkenberg. He's up 3 spots from where he started. Alonso in P11 as we see a Red Bull going off behind a McLaren. That is Ricciardo and Van Dorn in reverse order there. Ricciardo in 14th, Van Dorn in 13th. Ricciardo struggling with something there. Again, he had that contact with Ericsson before. Here it is in replay. Van Dorn and Ricciardo battling through turn 2. Yes, Ricciardo just locked up the left front wheel, lost about half of his steering consequently, and went off of the circuit. No problem though, he rejoins. Ricciardo is certainly struggling though, and I have to say, neither Red Bull is particularly fast this weekend. Hungary is traditionally a Red Bull circuit, but they've been nowhere this time. Working lap 6 of 70, Hamilton has already pulled out a 3.6 second gap over his teammate, P1 to 2. P3, Sebastian Vettel. He is a further 1.3 seconds behind Valtteri Bottas. Kimi Raikkonen a further 1.5 seconds behind. Max Verstappen going slowly out of turn 3, it would appear. He's on the radio saying no power. He still has drive in that Red Bull. He's not stranded yet, but he has reduced his pace significantly, and he is tumbling down the order on board with Verstappen. I see 5th gear indicated. He's stuck in gear. He has punched up neutral and pulled off by a fire marshal. Day done, Max Verstappen. Virtual safety car has been deployed. The drivers will get a lap time delta displayed on their steering wheels, and they will have to try not to exceed it. Seeing Max Verstappen's onboard here in replay. See, I see 3rd gear, 4th gear. He has gear shift, but the engine is way down on power for sure. Unfortunately, another reliability gremlin for Red Bull. Jonathan, with a hydraulic issue, I would expect to see gear shift problems. Verstappen radio. Well, Verstappen's radio there, let's just say he's not happy with what's going on. Every other word was censored. But, Jonathan, to finish that point, with the hydraulics issue, I'd expect to see gear shift problems for Verstappen, and I was seeing him going up and down through the gearbox all the way up until the point that he stopped, so at least the primary hydraulic system was okay. I don't know if he was just getting warning messages on the dash and they told him to stop or what, but definitely something not right, probably with the engine itself on that Red Bull. Meanwhile, Danny Ricciardo in the sister Red Bull is in 12th. Virtual safety car has been stubbed down. The track is green all around again. Verstappen's car has been recovered. Meanwhile, Danny Ricciardo still trying to get his way past the McLarens. He has already disposed of Stoffel Van Dorn. He's now trying to dispose of Fernando Alonso. Will he try to go up the inside out of turn one? Yes, he's trying it. Does the McLaren have enough horsepower? It apparently does. Either that or Fernando Alonso is just the best of the late breakers. He holds off Ricciardo through turn 3. Coming down through turn 4 now, Ricciardo is in the slipstream, but not quite enough straight line speed difference to overhaul the Spaniard. That McLaren is still an absolutely terrible car. Even though they no longer have the Honda engines, they have switched to the much more reliable Renault units, as I say that, and Max Verstappen retired with probably a Renault engine problem a couple of laps ago, but still, the McLarens cannot consistently break into the points. Alonso radio. Alonso saying that Romain Grosjean overtook him in the virtual safety car period. We'll need another replay to see that. We just saw the replay, but I couldn't see any marshalling posts there. There were no plainly visible flags or flag repeater lights, so we'll need a definitive answer on that, but Alonso is complaining about it. Danny Ricciardo on the start-finish straight behind Fernando Alonso with DRS assistance, of course. Ricciardo down the inside into turn 1, and he makes the move stick. Position change. Ricciardo in P11, Alonso now in P12. Alonso trying to fight back up the outside, but that's never going to work. Ricciardo in P11. Norman Robinson, Lewis Hamilton, as we pick him up now on the world feed, continues to lead this race to the tune of 4 seconds over Valtteri Bottas. Sebastian Vettel is a further 2.2 seconds behind Kimi Räikkönen, 1.2 seconds behind Vettel. Working lap 10 of 70, 60 laps to go. Sky Sports talking to Christian Horner, Red Bull team principal. From Christian Horner's mouth to your ears, Horner says they think it's an MGUK problem for Max Verstappen. Meanwhile, taking a look at Charles Leclerc on the pit wall of the Sauber guys. Unsure what happened to him, but his day was done at the end of lap 1. And making the point about championship implications for this race. Depending on what happens here today, Hockenheim may or may not have been an absolutely biblical disaster for Ferrari's Constructors' Championship hopes and for Sebastian Vettel's Drivers' Championship hopes. Of course, Vettel crashing out in those very difficult conditions a week ago in Hockenheim. Raikkonen radio. Well, that was a very long radio exchange between Kimi Räikkönen and the Ferrari pits. That's going to be a meme now. Basically, the long and short of it is, Kimi Räikkönen's drinks bottle is not working. It took them about 40 seconds to get that message across to Kimi. But yes, to finish that point about Hockenheim last weekend, Sebastian Vettel crashing out amid those changeable conditions, going between wet and dry in the final few laps of that race. If Ferrari, and namely Sebastian Vettel, cannot bring the fight to Mercedes today, the implications for what happened a week ago at Hockenheim could go from perhaps no harm done to perhaps championship lost. We need to wait and see what's happening, but of course, 59 laps from now, we will have an answer. World feed picking up Lewis Hamilton coming through turn 3. The Mercedes looks absolutely glued to the road. Hamilton not working any dramas that we know of. The gap between he and Valtteri Bottas is now enormous. It's 5.1 seconds. Sky commentators just trying to go through the Ferrari strategy at this point. The idea is Sebastian Vettel, when he makes his pit stop, presumably only one stop, they're going to put the ultra-soft tires on. Right now, both of the Mercedes cars and Kimi Räikkönen on the ultra-soft, so Ferrari running a split strategy. Vettel is on the soft compound. Ferrari thinking that they're going to have pace at the end. When the Mercedes cars go onto the softs, Vettel will go onto the ultra-softs, and Ferrari are thinking, well, they're going to be so much faster that he'll just overtake them with no problem. We've seen time and time again that this strategy from Ferrari doesn't work. The Mercedes are able to get faster and faster as the fuel load burns down, and the tire compound almost becomes irrelevant in those cases. The Mercedes is going to be just as light as the Ferrari by the end of this race as fuel has been burned off. I don't think it really matters what tires you're on. Grosjean radio. Romain Grosjean complaining about the overall grip levels in that Haas. He's saying, I'm going to crash at some point. Well, hopefully that doesn't happen. The team get back on the radio to him and say, well, we're still in a good position, keep going. Meanwhile, Daniel Ricciardo has come alive. He's just overtaken Brendan Hartley into turn 1. Honda power in the Toro Rosso, Renault power in the Red Bull. Renault outdrags Honda. No real surprise there. Although I do have to say, in terms of fairness, the Honda engines in the back of the Toro Rosso this year have been so much more reliable than they ever were in the McLarens. In replay, radio to Daniel Ricciardo, they're just telling him, nice job, next one is Sainz. So obviously Ricciardo now targeting P7. The gap there is just half a second. Ferrari in the pit lane with soft compound tires on. Obviously this is for Kimi Räikkönen. Räikkönen comes into the pit box, stops on the marks, 4 tires off, 4 tires on. Raikkonen making that switch between the ultra soft and the soft on lap 15 of 70. Are they going to do the rest of this race on the soft compound tires? We'll see. I'm not entirely convinced of that. Raikkonen rejoins. We'll see where he rejoins. It appears he'll come back in P6. There was a slight problem on that Ferrari pit stop. What was it? Yep, left rear wheel just a little slow to get on. No real harm done, though. Christian Gaetan, yes. Mick Schumacher, the son of 7-time Formula One world champion Michael Schumacher. He took his first Formula 3 win this weekend. Meanwhile, Mercedes, Valtteri Bottas in the pit lane, going from the ultra softs to the softs. Lap 16 of 70. They're mirroring Ferrari. At least they're mirroring Raikkonen with Bottas. Vettel inherits P2 for the moment. Fastest lap, Lewis Hamilton, 122.539. Are they preparing to pit Hamilton soon? And Daniel Ricciardo has now disposed of Carlos Sainz for P7. Sainz trying to fight back. Nope, thinks better of it. Getting a report from Ted Kravitz in the pit lane saying the Ferrari was also out with tires for Sebastian Vettel, but they were the medium compound. They were the silver sidewall medium tires. That would be an interesting strategy call. The medium tires, obviously the slowest tires on offer here, but they would easily do the rest of the Grand Prix distance. It would just come down to how much time would Vettel lose relative to the front runners. But if he didn't have to stop again, and let's say Bottas and Hamilton do, that could put them in the pound seat. Right now, though, the gap between Hamilton and Vettel for positions 1 and 2 is 8.7 seconds. Meanwhile, Kimi Räikkönen now disposing of Kevin Magnussen into turn 1. Räikkönen resumes P5. Meanwhile, in the midfield, Danny Ricciardo, currently running in P7, just set fastest lap of the race, 122.397. On board with Lewis Hamilton in the lead, Mercedes radio to him just saying, just keep them coming. Taking a look at the left front tire on Hamilton's car, you can definitely see the wear pattern on the camber settings there on the front suspension. You can see these, looks to be 4 stripes down both shoulders of the tire, the inside and outside shoulder. That's something that we've been seeing on these Pirelli slick tires for several years now. It just appears to be a normal artifact of how they wear. Hamilton's lap times are still very competitive, 122.461 last time by. Raikkonen, meanwhile, last time by, sets fastest lap of the race at 122.046, about 4/10 faster than Lewis Hamilton at this time. Jack Barlow basically asking, are we going to see Vettel and Hamilton really going for it head-to-head in the World Championship? For the last 2 years, we've had the opportunity to see a battle like that, but it's just never shook out that way. We'll see if this year is the year for that. Currently, with the way that Mercedes and Ferrari are running relative to each other in equal conditions and in good dry conditions here, even at a track where Mercedes were not the most optimistic about their pace, it appears that they still have the upper hand on Ferrari. Sebastian Vettel going green on that last lap. Personal best 122.443. Lewis Hamilton last time by did a 122.423. So just about 0.02 of a second slower per lap than Lewis Hamilton is Sebastian Vettel right now. The gap is 8.8 seconds. Down to Ricciardo on the radio to Red Bull. They're just asking him how are the tires. He's saying they've been pretty consistent. Max Verstappen dropped out of this race with some sort of engine issue. Christian Horner said that they think it was the MGUK, so the electric motor on the rear axle of that Red Bull. We'll have to wait for further information on that. But Verstappen out of this race with a technical failure of some sort. In replay, Valtteri Bottas overcooking it ever so slightly through the chicane there in Sector 2. Just picking up a little bit of dirt. He resumes no problem. The delta time through the pit lane here at Hungary is about 25 seconds, is it? If you have a good pit stop, you got to budget 3 seconds or so for it. And 3 seconds, then going down the pit lane, it's about, I would say it's around 20 to 23 seconds or so. Daniel Ricciardo sizing up Kevin Magnussen for P6. A little bit far away to attempt that into turn 1. Tries to position the car strategically to run up the inside into turn 2. Will he do it on the brakes? No. Magnussen is very feisty, of course. And he continues to hold off the Australian through turn 3. Heading through turn 4, it's too fast for any sort of maneuvers to happen. And indeed, Magnussen holds P6 for the moment. This battle between Magnussen and Ricciardo continuing through the duration of this lap. Ricciardo's a little bit closer to the Haas this time around the final corner. He'll have DRS assistance again into turn 1. Let's see this battle conclude. Ricciardo jumping out from under the brakes. That was a little bit close into turn 1, but Magnussen continuing to have the upper hand. Ricciardo is very close now into turn 2. Magnussen has the inside, but the outside into turn 2 is actually faster. Picture threatening to break up there, but Ricciardo through turn 3 gets the Haas. Ricciardo now up into P6. Replay of that move. Very interesting to see that the outside line is faster through turn 2, but we've seen it time and time again. We saw it yesterday in qualifying as well. Even when it's wet, there is more grip there on the outside. Detour pointing out that Vettel is gaining on Lewis Hamilton. He is, but marginally so. Hamilton last time by 122.7 dead. Sebastian Vettel 122.279 last time by. The gap is just over 8 seconds, so he is gaining, but it is marginal. Just briefly there on board with Lewis Hamilton again. The tires still appear to be okay, at least from a visual standpoint, and Hamilton's not complaining about anything. Meanwhile, Kimi Räikkönen has just disposed of Pierre Gasly for P4. Kimi Räikkönen, though, he is 33 seconds back from Lewis Hamilton. It appeared that Lewis Hamilton lost some time last time by. His last lap time, a 123.760. Vettel last time by a 122.276. The gap is now 6.5 seconds. See, here's the strategy problem that Ferrari now have. Hamilton, we know he's going to pit at some point. Sebastian Vettel still has to pit. If Hamilton stops now, Vettel will inherit the race lead. But it's effectively meaningless because Hamilton will still be the leader on aggregate once Vettel makes his stop, unless he can be several seconds a lap quicker than the Mercedes, which is not likely at this point. Mercedes are still going to be in the pound seat. Again, Ferrari just out of sync with their strategy calls, as always it would appear this year. Completing lap 23 of 70, Hamilton stays out for yet another lap. Sebastian Vettel following. The gap has now grown once again to 7.3 seconds. Replay with Sebastian Vettel. He made a mistake in Sector 3. Yes, that was a big mistake in Sector 3. Well, actually not that big in terms of how it turned out. Just missed the apex there of the third to last corner there in Sector 3. But now he's got a big flat spot on his right front tire. Lewis Hamilton having to deal with the lapped car of Lance Stroll. Will have lost a little bit of time there. But Vettel lost 1.1 seconds in Sector 3 of the previous lap. World Feed picking up Sebastian Vettel now. He is also going to have to negotiate the Williams of Lance Stroll. Renault in the pit lane for Nico Hülkenberg. Hülkenberg making his first stop of the day. On the marks, 4 wheels off, 4 wheels on. Looks like the Renault is on the medium compound tires. And indeed he is. Lewis Hamilton stays out yet again to begin lap 25. At this point, Ferrari have a decision to make. Vettel clearly is losing time on these tires, and he's going to be going on to the Ultra Softs next time by. Hamilton radio. Mercedes radio to Hamilton saying it won't be long now, just keep it up. We can definitely interpret that to mean that Mercedes will be pitting Hamilton without too much more time between then and now. However, Hamilton will be going on to the soft compound tires. Vettel will be going on to the ultra soft tires. Neither man has stopped yet today. Problem is, Ferrari don't really have anything to gain here. they are putting all of their eggs in the basket of Seb is going to be ridiculously fast on the Ultrasofts, but it doesn't appear to be the case. And putting him on the Ultrasofts before half distance, I'm not sure that's a good idea. Hamilton has done 24 laps on these Ultrasofts, and as I speak, he dives into the pits. Hamilton to his pit box. Stopping on the marks, 4 wheels off, 4 wheels on, and released. Very quick pit stop by the Mercedes boys, 2.7 seconds. Sebastian Vettel inherits the race lead for the time being. Hamilton goes on to those soft tires as we were projecting. Now it is all in the hands of Sebastian Vettel to try and do something. The total pit lane time for Lewis Hamilton was 21.48 seconds. So there is your delta time. It's about 21.5 seconds when you have a good stop. Hamilton rejoins in P2. He is 13.2 seconds now behind Sebastian Vettel. So Vettel basically needs to find another 10 seconds if he wants to be safe on the pit stop. That is not very likely. Hamilton in the Mercedes on fresh tires with a lighter fuel load now, having run 26 laps of the Grand Prix. I don't think Vettel's going to be able to find 10 seconds. Gap between Vettel and Hamilton staying stable at the moment, 13.1 seconds. Remember, Vettel on far older tires than Lewis Hamilton. When will Ferrari decide to pit Vettel? Ferrari have a habit of waiting too long to bring their man in. They lose time for lap after lap, and then they bring their guy in, and then the gap after the pit stop becomes unrecoverable. If Ferrari were to pit Vettel within the next couple of laps, I mean, depending on what happens to that gap, perhaps it could be something that Vettel could fight with, although he is going to have to go on the less durable ultra-soft tires. Will they do the rest of the race distance, which is more than half of the Grand Prix? Maybe. Then again, maybe not. We'll have to see. On board with Danny Ricciardo in replay down into turn 1. Overtaking Pierre Gasly for P5. Move done there. Obviously, Toro Rosso letting their sister Red Bull cars through without too much of a fight. Bottas radio. Mercedes radio to Valtteri Bottas saying, Lewis is just pitted, Vettel staying out for another 15 to 20 laps. That would be quite the undercut to try and make there. But remember, we are watching that gap between Vettel and Hamilton. It has come down. It is now 12.6 seconds. Hamilton just reset fastest lap of the race at 121.968. Vettel last time by 122.470. So the gap has come down by a little over a second already. Watching that gap between Vettel and Hamilton, it is now back up to around 12.9 seconds, but on aggregate it is still a loss for Ferrari. I would be going to plan B at this point. Pit Seb now, put him on the Ultrasoft, see how fast he can go. And then perhaps bring in Kimi Räikkönen to do a little bit of rear gunnery, perhaps have an interesting tactic into the back of one of the Mercedes, something like that. I don't know. Do it for Sergio this weekend. Working lap 30 of 70 in this Hungarian Grand Prix. The reason why the result here today is so critical is because we go into about a month-long summer break after this race, and whoever comes out on top today has the psychological advantage heading into the second half of the season. It's all mind games at this point in the championship. We're nowhere near the end of the points battle for the drivers' or constructors' titles, but somebody who wins with a gap of about a month heading into the summer break, they are going to be riding high for longer than any other person or any other team is going to be able to ride that wave at any other point during this season. There is simply a month with no action coming up. So if Mercedes or Ferrari win today, they're able to carry that storyline all the way through to the end of August. So today, it's not valuable in terms of the championship fight per se, but it is very valuable in terms of psychology. You can maintain your team's momentum through that summer break. You can all go on vacation on a high, and of course you'll also have the media advantage because whoever wins today, that is going to be who is being talked about for the next month. The gap, Sebastian Vettel to Lewis Hamilton, is now up to 14.3 seconds. Again, he needs it to be about 23 seconds to be safe on the pit stop. Delta time here is about 21 and a half seconds, assuming that your pit stop takes 3 seconds. We saw a slow stop for Kimi Räikkönen, it was about 5 seconds. So if Vettel wants to be resuming neck and neck with Lewis Hamilton after his pit stop, he needs it to be around 23 seconds. Meanwhile, Perez and Stroll going for P16. Fairly textbook move there for the Mexican. Meanwhile, taking a look on the world feed of Kimi Räikkönen here in pursuit of Valtteri Bottas. Räikkönen on those soft compound tires, basically doing the reverse of what Vettel's strategy is. Räikkönen's tires look okay. Little bits of wear stripes are evident there, particularly on the right front, but the performance seems to be there. The gap between Bottas and Räikkönen is 1.2 seconds, just outside DRS range for Kimi Räikkönen. Meanwhile, Kevin Magnussen pits from P7. Expecting him to go on the soft compound tires, and indeed he does. Raikkonen has come down to within 1 second of Valtteri Bottas. If that gap remains down the start-finish straight, he'll have DRS assistance. Slow stop in replay for Kevin Magnussen. Lots of trouble getting the left front wheel off, but they kept their heads together, and they released Magnussen in a good and safe condition. Raikkonen with the DRS open on Valtteri Bottas in front. Also Marcus Ericsson there in the Sauber, creating a little bit of a roadblock there unintentionally for Kimi Raikkonen. Blue flags for Ericsson, letting the Ferrari by. Remember, the Sauber and the Ferrari, same engines in those cars. Pierre Gasly also in the pits right now from P6 onto the soft compound tires. Presumably he's good to go to the end. Helicam following Bottas and Raikkonen around the final corner. Raikkonen should have DRS on Bottas again. Perhaps he does not. No, the gap is just over 1 second. 1.117 is the gap between Bottas and Raikkonen right now. The gap between Vettel and Hamilton remaining stationary, 13.5 seconds. Vettel is not losing any time to the Mercedes, but he's also really not gaining any. Perhaps a tenth or so, but that's it. He is not pulling out the sort of gap that he needs to make his pit stop and stay ahead of the Mercedes. Looking in slow motion at the rear tires of Lewis Hamilton, lots of blistering on Hamilton's rears. We're starting to see some blisters showing up on the rears of Sebastian Vettel, but they don't look to be as severe as those of Hamilton. We've seen several times this year the Mercedes is rather hard on its tires, and this is a reversal of trends. Remember in 2014-2015 we were talking about how gentle the Mercedes is on its tires, but it seems to be the opposite effect now. The Ferrari working better with whichever tires it's got on board than the Mercedes does. However, the gap between Vettel and Hamilton has come down now to right around 13 seconds exactly. Vettel has been negotiating some back markers on this lap, and it looks like he has a Force India and a Renault immediately in front of him again. These back markers not helping him. However, he will get blue flags, and they should vacate their positions relative to the Ferrari in due course. Wow, look at that gap now. 12.1 seconds between Vettel and Hamilton. Sebastian Vettel lost about a second on the previous lap. Lap time last time by for Sebastian, a 123.662. Hamilton last time by a 122.712. So Hamilton almost a full second faster than Sebastian Vettel on that last lap. Gap continuing to drop between Vettel and Hamilton, now down to 11.6 seconds. Radio. Sebastian Vettel on the radio saying, I need those blue flags. Where are they? So once again, we have the blue flag wish from Sebastian Vettel. He is getting them. The gap, though, big damage being done to that gap by these back markers. It's now down to 10.8 seconds. .2 seconds now the gap between Vettel and Hamilton. Vettel staying out for as long as he has on these soft tires. The potential to build a gap was there, but the back markers are foiling it. At this point, it might make more sense to put Vettel on the ultrasofts and just send him to the end. .6 seconds the gap between Vettel and Hamilton. Vettel, you've fallen off the cliff. I know it's most likely not down to the tires, it's down to the back markers and where you're catching them up, but 9.3 seconds now. When you make your pit stop, now you're not going to be within a few seconds of Hamilton, now you're going to be about 10 seconds back from him. That is a non-recoverable gap. Vettel last time by 123.545. Hamilton last time by 122.499. The gap is 9.2 seconds. Now Lewis Hamilton does have to deal with all of that lap traffic that Vettel just negotiated. Sebastian stays out. There's a lot of understeer now in that Ferrari. Taking a look at those front tires, they still look visually okay, but I know that there can't be much life left in them. The gap is now really between Vettel and Bottas. It's now 21.164 seconds. So at this point, Vettel, when he does pit, and Ferrari are now in the pit lane with soft compound tires, this must be for Kimi Räikkönen. Yes, Kimi in the pits for Ferrari. Off of the soft tires and onto the soft tires. Two-stop strategy, interestingly, for Räikkönen. Valtteri Bottas, fastest lap of the race, 121.842. Meanwhile, at the front, the gap between Vettel and Hamilton remains 9.7 seconds. The gap between Vettel and Bottas, positions 1 to 3, is now 20.7 seconds. At this point, Vettel resumes in P4. Vettel in the pit lane from the race lead. 10.061 seconds was the final gap there. Vettel on the pit limiter. Surely they're putting ultrasofts on. Stopped on the marks. 4 wheels off, 4 wheels on. Slow stop for Sebastian Vettel. Problem on the left front. Ultrasoft tires fitted. Vettel's going to resume in P4. Valtteri Bottas, fastest lap again, 121.736. That slower pit stop put Sebastian Vettel down there. He is in P3 right now. Jonathan, that's a good point, and that's what Ferrari must be going for. Sebastian will be on the faster tire at the end of the race, but will it still have life left in it by the end of the race? We're on lap 40 of 70, so still some significant distance to go in this Grand Prix. Hamilton and Bottas will both be on old super soft tires. We'll see what happens with these. Hamilton, of course, resuming the race lead. The gap is 8.2 seconds between Hamilton and Bottas for positions 1 and 2. Vettel is just 7/10ths behind Valtteri Bottas for P2. We'll see. Vettel with DRS into turn 1. Not quite close enough to the Mercedes to do anything about it. Vettel does have to be careful, though. Yes, he needs to make this position happen, but at the same time, he needs to protect those tires for the end. The whole point of Vettel being on the Ultrasofts now is to protect them to do a charge in the last 10 to 15 laps of this race, and we're coming up to that window before we know it. So Vettel needs to dispose of Bottas right away, but he also needs to be conservative while he does so. He does not need to be taking too much life out of these tires. Meanwhile, Kimi Räikkönen fastest lap of the race, a 121.405. On the Ferrari pit wall there, it looks like the front-end mechanic talking to one of the engineers on the pit wall. Again, they had a problem on that stop. Kimi Räikkönen on the radio complaining about a back marker. It's a Williams. Can't quite identify who that would be. Most likely it is Sirotkin. Didn't quite get out of the way fast enough for Kimi's liking. Meanwhile, WorldFeed picking up Bottas and Vettel, fighting over position 2. Again, Bottas is playing the rear gunner for Lewis Hamilton, and he's doing a very good job of it. His mission in life right now is to make Sebastian Vettel's day difficult, and he's doing it. They're causing the Ferrari to use its tires more than they would want. Therefore, that advantage of being on the super soft tires, the ultra soft tires, I beg your pardon, it's being negated by the second. Every single corner that Vettel remains behind Bottas, that's more life being taken out of those tires and less of an advantage for Seb at the end of this race. Hesitated I. I'm not sure if you're being facetious there. Ron Dennis to Ferrari? That would be sacrilege of sacrilege. Jonathan Straitman, yes, I also want rain. It's not going to happen here today, but we need something to happen here because this race is far from entertaining at this point. Lewis Hamilton continues to lead by 7.5 seconds over Valtteri Bottas. The gap between Bottas and Vettel for P2, 0.8 of a second. Vettel with DRS again on the Mercedes, however, still unable to convert anything of it, I do believe. Sebastian trying some alternative lines down the start-finish straight. Still not fast enough to overtake the Mercedes. Yes, Sebastian Vettel's rear tires there, again, starting to appear blistered. They are only 4 laps old. That is Valtteri Bottas accomplishing his mission. Again, playing the rear gunner for Hamilton. He is just trying to make Vettel overuse his tires, and it appears that is what is happening. Have a look at the rear tires of Sebastian Vettel when we get a chance. They are already quite heavily blistered. Lewis Hamilton coming up on Fernando Alonso now. Alonso, of course, is a lap down. He'll be getting a blue flag any time now. Red Bull in the pit lane for Daniel Ricciardo. This is, believe it or not, Ricciardo's first stop of the day. Off of the softs onto the ultra softs, I do believe. Indeed he is. Good stop by the Red Bull boys. 2.2 seconds. I'd say that's a very good stop indeed. Sky Sports already showing replays of the starts here because there really isn't much action out on the track. We saw that a contact between Ricciardo and Ericsson, turn 1, lap 1. And just getting a montage now of Ricciardo's assorted overtakes throughout the day. Resuming live pictures now, working lap 46 of 70. The order remains Hamilton ahead of Bottas by 8.7 seconds. Vettel's gap to Bottas has now grown significantly. P2 for Bottas, P3 for Vettel, 1.8 seconds between them. It appears that Ferrari have told Sebastian to stop attacking Bottas to save the tires. The Ferrari, yeah. having trouble overtaking Carlos Sainz there, who is a lap down. Don't quite understand what's going on with Vettel right now, but he has dropped back considerably from Valtteri Bottas. The gap is now 2.1 seconds. He's not even trying to attack the Mercedes anymore. Problems at Ferrari, I do suspect. Watching Romain Grosjean here, running in P11, just one spot out of the points. Radio. Romain Grosjean cannot believe that he's in P11 right now. The reason for that is both of the McLarens, they went long, according to Haas, and they jumped everybody. Alonso and Van Dorn running line astern in positions 8 and 9, respectively. Yes, a wastegate on a turbocharger. It's you've also heard these referred to as blow-off valves. That's what every teenage racer calls them. It's a wastegate. Basically, a turbocharger is an air pump. What it does is it sucks in air from the atmosphere and compresses it and sends it into the engine. The more air you have in your cylinders when you throw the fuel in, obviously the injection density needs to change to maintain the stoichiometric ratio, but more air you've got in there, the hotter and more completely your fuel is going to burn, meaning the more power you make. So turbocharger, as it builds up that air pressure known as boost or boost pressure, it needs a way to get rid of that air if it doesn't need to be sent to the engine. That's where the wastegate comes in. You might be able to hear a chirping or a hissing noise as turbocharged engines come off of the throttle. You might even hear that from these Formula One cars on occasion. Those are the wastegates opening up and dumping the excess pressure from the intake plenum behind the turbocharger. That is a wastegate. The reason why Formula One does not have a universal chassis or a universal engine is because Formula One has about 70 years of history of being a constructor-based formula. The thing that makes Formula One unique in open-wheel racing is that the cars are not spec cars. They are designed and manufactured by the teams who race them. Each team is not just an organization that runs the cars. They are also manufacturers in their own right. Every car you see on the grid is designed, manufactured, and raced by the teams that you see racing them. Each car is unique. "20 laps to go in this 2018 Hungarian Grand Prix, the last race for a while as we head into the summer break. The order is unchanged at the front of the field. Lewis Hamilton leads Valtteri Bottas by 12.7 seconds. There's a further 1.2 seconds between Bottas and Vettel for P3. Kimi Räikkönen in P4. He's 10 seconds behind Sebastian Vettel, running his own race here today. P5 for Daniel Ricciardo after starting well down the field. P6, Pierre Gasly. 7th for Magnussen. 8th for Alonso. 9th for Sainz. And 10th for Romain Grosjean. Stoffel Van Dorn going slowly down the start-finish straight. He's right down by turn 1 at this point. Definitely looking frustrated there in the cockpit. The McLaren has started to grind to a halt, I do fear. Depending on where Van Dorn brings that car to a stop, he may bring out a virtual safety car, if not a full-on safety car. Right now, double wave yellows in Sector 1. Marshall's out on the track. Stoffel has parked it right up against one of the gaps in the fence. Virtual safety car has been deployed. Mercedes preparing for a pit stop, we hear from Sky Sports commentary. We're not seeing those pictures. We need to see those pictures. The camera is showing one of the McLaren mechanics drinking water. Mercedes in the pit lane, but for whom? Timing and scoring not showing anybody in the pit lane for Mercedes. We have 2 sets of tires out right now in the Mercedes pits. Do we have the prospect of a stacked stop? Now Mercedes going away. Mercedes not pitting anybody. Neither Mercedes has dived into the pits. Mercedes were out there in the pit lane. They've since stood down back in their garage. On board with Sebastian Vettel here. Running about 40% slower under the virtual safety car. Vettel will have had the chance to cool his tires down a little bit. VSC stubbed down, green flags back up all around the circuit. We are back racing. Will that little bit of a break under the virtual safety car have given Vettel a little extra momentum to try and attack Bottas? The gap remains around 1.8 seconds. Again, we were seeing Vettel dealing with some blistering on his rear tires. In replay, Van Dorn's radio transmission to McLaren saying he lost drive. That happened right out of the final corner coming down the start-finish straight. Radio from McLaren to Van Dorn. The gearbox is gone. That's pretty clear. Yes, in terms of where Fernando Alonso is going to go, he does have an option to remain at McLaren. He's even been linked to a move back to Ferrari for 2019, believe it or not. I don't think there are any legs to that story, but it is a rumor out there. I think it's more likely that Fernando will stay at McLaren, maybe for 2019, before a move over to IndyCar for 2020. Again, we have yet to confirm what's going to happen with Fernando Alonso for next year. However, I don't see him going full-time into the World Endurance Championship. He's already won the 2 headline events in that series. He's won at the 6 Hours of Spa, and he has won the 24 Hours of Le Mans. Therefore, I don't think Fernando Alonso has anything left to prove in WEC. I do think, though, that he wants to pursue the Indy 500. We saw him do that last year, and he did very well. A full-time IndyCar drive would be a godsend for IndyCar and open-wheel fans here in the United States, I will say. Fernando Alonso is a global superstar. He is certainly one of the best drivers ever to get into a race car, and he's just very good in anything that he touches. So, I think, more likely than anything else, Fernando Alonso will be making a full-time switch to IndyCar either next year or for 2020. Sebastian Vettel closing up again on Valtteri Bottas a little bit. The gap is now just over 1 second, 1.012. We're on board now with Valtteri Bottas, looking back at the Ferrari. Again, Vettel needs to get within 1 second to get within DRS range. Will he do so? Remains to be seen, but we have yet to see the Ferrari overtaking the Mercedes today. World Feed picking up Lewis Hamilton here, just taking a look at his tires. For the most part, they look fine. They're 28 laps old. Lewis obviously trying to go to the end. With just 15 laps to go now, that is within sight. Rumors that Michelin returning to Formula One. At this point, it's all pie in the sky. Pirelli, they still have the exclusive contract to be the tire supplier for Formula One, and I think that's continuing for a couple of years yet. If Michelin come back, fair enough. If we don't have multiple tire manufacturers in Formula One, that's really not a story. Christian Gaitan, yeah, that's an incidental observation on IndyCar versus Formula One. IndyCar, they are trying to make their cars faster and more exciting. In Formula One, they're definitely not trying to make the cars faster. Next year, they're going to be about 3 seconds a lap slower with the new wings. Again, we'll see if that has any desired outcomes in terms of overtaking. But again, next year, 2019, Formula One cars are going to have slightly wider, but a whole lot less sophisticated a front wing design. The rear wings are also going to be somewhat wider and lower than they already are. Again, all of those rule changes basically enacted as a knee-jerk reaction to the Australian Grand Prix this year, which didn't see too much in terms of overtaking action, but we have had several absolutely fascinating races this year with lots of overtaking, so I don't really understand what Formula One are doing with the 2019 regulations, but Vettel and Bottas, they're running very close to each other now. Fernando Alonso there, the back marker, playing the spoiler a little bit for Valtteri Bottas. We'll see if Vettel is able to keep in touch with the Mercedes on this lap. He has no more DRS advantage remaining for this lap, but we will see, is he able to keep it on the island in that turbulent air behind the Mercedes? Coming through turn 4, the fastest corner on the circuit. Vettel dealing with a little bit of understeer, it would appear. Mostly that is due to turbulence. Vettel taking a slightly wider line on turn-in than Bottas through most of the medium-speed corners. Of course, the low-speed stuff, everybody pretty much approaches them in an identical fashion. We'll watch the Ferrari through Sector 2, where it is a little bit more aero-dependent. We'll see if he is able to maintain that gap. It is right now just about 1.04 seconds. Again, he needs to be within 1 second to trigger the DRS activation. Sebastian Vettel and Valtteri Bottas down the start-finish straight. Vettel has DRS on the Mercedes. Again, though, not able to make any gains on Valtteri Bottas ahead. Vettel is going perceptibly wider than Bottas is on turn-in to turn 1. And the gap remains basically stable, just 0.9 of a second now, according to timing and scoring. Ferrari radio to Vettel saying Bottas is starting to lose the rear tires. Well, I would think Sebastian Vettel's also starting to lose the rear tires. I saw him there running through Sector 2. Got the tail out a little bit through that high-speed right-hander. Again, almost imperceptible, but I promise you in the cockpit that was a bit of a hair-racing moment for Sebastian. Kimi Räikkönen now coming up to Sebastian Vettel. Räikkönen last time by a 121.436. Vettel last time by a 122.096. Hamilton last time by 122.105. Räikkönen actually running faster than anybody in front of him. Ferrari definitely playing a reactionary strategy now. One thing that they could do is to get Räikkönen ahead of Vettel and then have Kimi attack Valtteri. We'll see if that happens. If Kimi were somehow to overtake Vettel and Bottas, what Räikkönen would then have to do is hold Bottas up to allow Sebastian to overtake them both. That's a long shot. I wouldn't put it past Ferrari to try it now, but it is desperation now from the Ferrari pit wall. Again, Vettel is able to get close to the Mercedes through Sector 1, but it all just sort of falls away in Sector 2. Räikkönen, meanwhile, continuing to gain on his teammate. Gap between Vettel and Räikkönen now is 1.5 seconds. The gap between Bottas and Vettel is 0.7. Norman Robinson, the Miami Grand Prix, they missed the contract deadline this year. The city council in Miami appears not to be able to get its act together, and we will not see a Miami Grand Prix until 2020 at earliest. Again, these street races that we talk about every couple of years in the United States, I remember in 2010, 2011, there was talk that perhaps there would be a race in Liberty State Park here in New Jersey. That never materialized, and I do think the same is going to happen to the Miami Grand Prix. Another lap, another replay of the previous lap for Sebastian Vettel. Able to get close enough for DRS onto Bottas, but unable to convert it into an attack. Meanwhile, Räikkönen just quietly gaining on his teammate. The gap is now 1.1 seconds. Ten laps to go. Lewis Hamilton just started lap 60 of 70. The gap between he and Bottas is 17.9 seconds. The gap between Bottas and Vettel down to 0.85. Vettel with DRS again down start-finish. Not close enough to convert anything. Räikkönen holding station behind Vettel, continuing to gain all the time. Jonathan Straitman, yes. Bernie, a few years ago, actually this is coming up to about 10 years ago now, Bernie was talking about the possibility of wetting the track artificially to create some more excitement in the races. That plan, of course, never came to fruition. Obviously, when it does rain in Formula One, the races do tend to be more exciting just because there's that added element of danger and that added element of difficulty for the drivers to keep the cars on the road, as we saw last week in Hockenheim. However, that plan never came to fruition, obviously in the grounds of safety. To create artificially dangerous conditions, it just seemed a step too far, and nobody allowed that idea to come to fruition. On board the nose of Kimi Räikkönen in pursuit of his teammate and of Valtteri Bottas. We're just dealing with the characteristics of this circuit now. The cars really can't follow too much more closely than this, particularly through the fast sweepers in Sector 2. Too much outwash from the wings and the aero appendages on the car in front. Got a quick look there at Maurizio Arrivabene on the Ferrari pit wall. Not looking particularly enthusiastic about the proceedings. His men are stuck in positions 3 and 4, Vettel and Raikkonen respectively. Once again, Sebastian Vettel has DRS on Valtteri Bottas. Lewis Hamilton radio. Hamilton asking about what Bottas is doing. He's 20.5 seconds down the road from him, but he is still holding his own, acting as the dutiful rear gunner. At this point, Bottas could retire from the race and the Ferraris are not going to catch Hamilton. The gap is 20.6 seconds. Hamilton could almost make a pit stop and still resume in the lead. Quite weirdly, Ferrari asking Vettel, how fast can you go in free air? Vettel responds about 1.5 seconds faster. Problem is, I don't see why they would ask him that, because the car in front of Vettel is not his teammate, it's the rival of the Mercedes team. Therefore, I don't know, what are you doing? You're just going to frustrate your man even more. He's been stuck behind Bottas for a ton of laps now. Doesn't appear that he's able to make any inroads on him. The tires are shot. The plan to put him on ultrasofts at the end, well, they did the plan, but the plan didn't come through. Slow pit stop cost them that position. It appears they're stuck where they are. 5 laps to go in the Hungarian Grand Prix, working lap 65 of 70. Sebastian Vettel closer to Valtteri Bottas than he has been in the last couple of laps, coming down the start-finish straight. Vettel staying in the slipstream of the Mercedes now with DRS assistance. Bottas goes defensive to the inside. Bottas holding off there. Vettel trying the switchback on the Mercedes. He's got better drive out of turn 1. Are we about to see an overtake fair and square on the Mercedes? Bottas goes, and there's contact between the Mercedes of Valtteri Bottas and the Ferrari of Sebastian Vettel. Bottas has messed up his front wing. Sebastian Vettel in second place. Do we have damage on the Ferrari? We need a better camera angle on that. So far, Vettel's pace appears to be unaffected. Sebastian Vettel into second place, Raikkonen into third. Valtteri Bottas has damage on the front wing. Here is that incident in replay. There does appear to be damage on that front wing of Valtteri Bottas. Taking a look at the rear of Sebastian Vettel, we need a closer, tighter camera shot. Not seeing any obvious damage on the Ferrari. Bottas is going to need a wing. Vettel radio. Radio to Vettel, Ferrari saying the tires are fine. That is definitely something that you worry about when you see a wing going into the rear of a Formula One car. It is so easy for those carbon elements to puncture a tire. Mercedes in the pit lane for Bottas. Bottas appears to be staying out. On board with Bottas, I can't see enough of his front wing. Thank you, Halo, to see what the damage is. There is significant damage on the right-hand side of the front wing of Valtteri Bottas, and the whole wing itself appears to be askewed. It appears the mounting pylons have been damaged. There is some debris just off of the circuit there through turn 2. It's in the run-out zone. There is no appreciable debris on line. In replay here, Vettel going up the inside out of turn 1 on Valtteri Bottas. He did get better drive, and he also still had DRS assistance. Bottas holding the inside line into turn 2, as he's entitled to do. However, he couldn't get the car stopped. Of course, being so far up the inside, you're going to decrease the radius of that corner so significantly. It makes the corner quite a bit tighter. The Mercedes didn't quite have the turn-in to avoid the Ferrari. And again, lots of damage there on that front wing of Valtteri Bottas. The cascade elements on the right-hand side completely gone. The whole flap element on Bottas's wing is hanging loose. We can see some cables there trailing from the leading edge of Bottas's front wing. Undoubtedly, those are little pitot sensors to measure the airflow across the wing. The order now at the sharp end of the field. Lewis Hamilton leads by 23.5 seconds over Sebastian Vettel. Kimi Raikkonen inherits third position. Valtteri Bottas continuing on in fourth. Now, Valtteri Bottas fending off Daniel Ricciardo. Remember, Bottas with the injured Mercedes. This should be an easy time for the healthy Red Bull of Ricciardo. Bottas going very defensive down the start-finish straight, running up against the pit wall there. Ricciardo under braking, going around the outside, and there's more contact. Valtteri Bottas punts Daniel Ricciardo off the road. Bottas, get a black flag, please. What are you doing? You're trying to take everybody around you out of the race. That's going to be a penalty now for Valtteri Bottas, clearly. Lots of damage now on the right-hand side of the floor for Daniel Ricciardo. Turn 2 incident between Bottas and Vettel was noted. Now there's more pieces of Red Bull falling off. There's a lot of damage down the right side of Daniel Ricciardo's car. The turning vane on the right-hand side pod is coming loose and starting to break up. There's also damage along the floor of Daniel Ricciardo. Big square contact. The left front wheel of Valtteri Bottas just went into the side of the Red Bull. That was quite a significant clout. Bottas is quite honestly driving erratically. He's attempting to take people out around him. This deserves a penalty, if not some more harsh sanctions by the stewards. Toto Wolff not at all amused by that. Valtteri Bottas, of course, just signed a contract extension with Mercedes. His car, taking a look at it, now there is damage on the left side as well as the right side. There's actually a hole in the left side pod of Valtteri Bottas's car. Race control memo. Turn 1 incident between Ricciardo and Bottas will be investigated after the race. Fernando Alonso unlapping himself from Valtteri Bottas now. Ricciardo radio. Daniel Ricciardo is trying to attack Valtteri Bottas again. He is gaining a lot on the Mercedes. Meanwhile, Lewis Hamilton comes by start-finish to begin the final lap. Daniel Ricciardo will definitely have the red mist coming down. He is going to overtake Bottas no matter what happens. That I can promise you. Daniel Ricciardo right up onto the gearbox of the Mercedes now. Coming down start-finish for the final time. This is going to be action. Daniel Ricciardo tucking into the slipstream of the Mercedes. DRS open on the Red Bull. This is going to be fiery into turn 1. Bottas goes defensive up the inside. Ricciardo thinking better of going around the outside again, but he's trying to switch back on Bottas through turn 1. Easily he drives past the Mercedes, even with damage of his own. Daniel Ricciardo gets the move done on Valtteri Bottas. That was retribution. Meanwhile, around the final corner already, on board with Lewis Hamilton as he salutes the crowd, victory in the 2018 Hungarian Grand Prix to Lewis Hamilton and to Mercedes. However, their second man, Valtteri Bottas, is going to finish 5th, it would appear. Not a good day for the Finn. Meanwhile, Sebastian Vettel, damage limitation for the German, P2, to come across and take the checkered flag. He's followed home by Kimi Räikkönen in P3. So a double podium finish for Ferrari. Unfortunately, it was not the top step, but damage limitation. And of course, Valtteri Bottas off of the podium now, losing some points in the constructors' standings for Mercedes. Damage limitation. Lewis Hamilton does extend his lead in the Drivers' Championship, but not by as much as it could have been. I think the storyline of this race, Lewis Hamilton radio. Lewis Hamilton just extending his thanks to the team, as you would expect in a situation like this. However, the storyline as far as Mercedes are concerned, yes, they did manage to win the race, but their second driver threw away what was pretty assuredly a 1-2 finish. Now, they just signed a contract extension with Valtteri Bottas, but actions like that, if I were team principal, that would be enough for me to fire my driver. Let's see if that story starts to develop. Timing and scoring now has frozen at the end of the race. The final order in the 2018 Hungarian Grand Prix looks a bit like this. Taking the win, Lewis Hamilton, car number 44. P2, Sebastian Vettel for Ferrari. P3, Kimi Räikkönen, also of Ferrari. Fourth for Daniel Ricciardo of Red Bull, and the only Red Bull to make it to the end. P5 for Valtteri Bottas in the second Mercedes. P6 for Pierre Gasly in the first of the Toro Rossos. Tremendous result for him. P7, Kevin Magnussen in the first of the Haas cars. P8 for Fernando Alonso in the recalcitrant McLaren. P9 for Carlos Sainz of Renault. And P10, Romain Grosjean in the second Haas. Double points finish yet again for Haas. P11, Brendan Hartley in the second Toro Rosso. P12, Nico Hülkenberg for Renault. P13, Esteban Ocon in the Force India, followed by his teammate Sergio Perez in P14. P15, Marcus Ericsson of Sauber. P16 for Sergei Sirotkin in the Williams. And P17 and last car classified, Lance Stroll, also of Williams. Not classified and out of the Hungarian Grand Prix, Stoffel van Dorn, Max Verstappen, and Charles Leclerc. Now, of course, the speculation about what will become of Valtteri Bottas can begin. I think that could well warrant a disqualification. That was the most egregious display of just incompetence I've seen in quite a long time. And we're not talking about a backmarker here. We're talking about Valtteri Bottas, race winner and, long shot championship contender on a couple of occasions. Valtteri Bottas driving the Mercedes. So that is not something that we should be seeing at the sharp end of the field at all. Paul di Resta now catching up with our top three finishers. And yes, bringing up the results in Hungary as of late, I have to look back at my stats to make this official, but quite recently the winner of the Hungarian Grand Prix has not gone on to win the World Championship. This goes back to 2004. Yes, every year since 2004, the winner of the Hungarian Grand Prix has not gone on to win the World Championship. Back to 2005, Räikkönen won this race, Alonso won the championship. 2006, Button won this race, Alonso won the World Championship. 2007, Hamilton won this race, Räikkönen won the World Championship. 2008, Kovalainen, championship to Hamilton. 2009, Hamilton won this race, championship goes to Button. And those statistics go all the way up to last year. Vettel won the Hungarian Grand Prix, Hamilton won the World Championship. So, Hamilton has won the Hungarian Grand Prix. Does Vettel get the World Championship? We'll see. Yes, Jonathan. Vettel very lucky there not to have sustained any appreciable damage with that contact from Valtteri Bottas. Again, when you see the front wing of a Formula One car going into a rear tire, it's so easy to get a tire cut by those cascade elements on the wings, but Vettel got lucky. So, we mentioned the psychological advantage to the winner of the Hungarian Grand Prix heading into the summer break. Yes, Mercedes won that race, but the second car, all over the place at the end. They threw away what was certainly a 1-2 finish. Ferrari was there to pick up the spoil, so although Ferrari did not win today, they finished second and third. Again, being consistent. Consistency is more important in a 21-race World Championship than all-out speed on many occasions. Just ask 1982 World Champion Keke Rosberg. Top three finishers have made it into the prep room just off of the podium. Lewis Hamilton taking a look at the overall results there. Vettel and Hamilton exchanging some words there. Kimi is already taken to the couch. Yes, Jonathan, that is a good point for the Constructors' Championship. Ferrari, 335 points. Mercedes, 345 points. Mercedes gaining 35 points in the Constructors' Championship today. Ferrari gaining 33, so very much damage control. Not much of a change in the Constructors' Championship. In the Drivers' Championship, Hamilton gains 25 points to sit at 213. Vettel gains 18 to sit at 189. So again, it is not far off in either championship fight right now. Going into the summer break, that's not a bad position to be in for either man. Top three finishers have made their way onto the podium. Stand by for the British and German national anthems. No antics taking place on the podium, but Lewis Hamilton in receipt of the winner's trophy. The trophies here in Hungary also looking quite traditional, quite ornate as well. Good to see some reasonable trophies here on a Formula One podium. Some long faces here at Ferrari, as you might expect. And to the champagne, both of the Ferrari men go straight for it. They might need a little bit of alcohol-induced euphoria to get over some of the recent events for Ferrari. However, not a bad result for them today, second and third. Again, consistency could be what spoils the World Championship this year. Mercedes and Hamilton taking the win, but their second car in P5 and involved in incidents which are still under investigation. Our overall championship standings as they are right now, again, we are awaiting any further action on Valtteri Bottas for that incident with Daniel Ricciardo. The driver's standings, as it is right now, looks like this. Lewis Hamilton leads the Drivers' Championship with 213 points. Sebastian Vettel in P2 with 189. Kimi Räikkönen in third place in the driver's standings with 146 points on the board. Valtteri Bottas in fourth with 132. Daniel Ricciardo, P5 for 118 points. P6 for Max Verstappen. No more points for him today, but 105 points on the board. Nico Hülkenberg in seventh with 52. Magnussen in eighth with 45. Alonso in ninth with 44. Perez in P10 with 30 points. P11 also with 30 points is Carlos Sainz. 29 points and P12 for Esteban Ocon. 13th for Pierre Gasly with 26 points. 14th for Romain Grosjean with 21 on the board. Charles Leclerc, no more points for him today, but 13 points on the board there in P15. P16 for Stoffel van Dorn with 8 points scored. P17, Marcus Ericsson with 5 points on the board. P18, Lance Stroll with 4 points. P19, Brendan Hartley with 2 points, and in last 20th position in the driver standing, Sergei Sirotkin, the only driver not to score points so far this year. In the Constructors' Championship, Mercedes lead the field with 345 points. Ferrari in second with 335, only 10 points in it at the sharp end of the Constructors' Championship. P3 for Red Bull Racing with 223 points on the board. P4 for Renault with 82. P5, Haas with 66 points. P6, Force India with 59 on the board. P7 for McLaren with 52 points scored. P8 for Toro Rosso with 28 points. P9, Sauber with 18 points. And P10, Williams with 4 points on the board. In terms of why Charles Leclerc retired, we don't know why. It was definitely a technical failure of some sort. Didn't see any visual damage on that Sauber. Again, he just dropped out of the race at the end of the first lap. Lack of fuel for Charles Leclerc, that would be indicative of some sort of fuel pump failure. Sky Sports just showing some assorted replays there. We took a look at the start where it was reasonably clean. All the incidents happening at the end of this race. Going into the summer break here, Mercedes have the upper hand in terms of the most recent win, but again, Ferrari looking very consistent yet again. We'll see what happens as we move out of the summer break, and of course the storylines will continue to simmer. As far as the teams are concerned, there will be 2 weeks where the teams basically shut down. According to FIA mandate, they're not allowed to have anybody at the factory really for about 10 days. They physically have to turn the lights off at the factory, so they do save a little bit of money, but more importantly, most team personnel do get the chance to see their families again. Again, the people who are traveling with the team for these races, they are away from home for about 10 months of the year, so it's got to be a very difficult life at times to work in Formula One. I bet it's hectic, I bet it's chaotic, I bet it's very cool as well, but at the same time, it appears to be a game for younger people who perhaps don't have as many obligations in their lives. You earn very good money, I'm sure, but I imagine the constant travel has to be majorly stressful. They get a chance to take a well-deserved break now. Toto Wolff being interviewed here by the Sky Sports team. He's being mum on what was going on with Bottas there at the end, particularly with the incident with Daniel Ricciardo. Again, that is still under investigation. Abela458, yes, I've seen that video about Formula One logistics. It's absolutely crazy. I would say it more so resembles a military operation than anything else. Just the way that they have to pre-stage things all around the world, sometimes months in advance. It's crazy how all of that happens, but you see, week in and week out, the races, they go off without a hitch. The teams aren't left wanting for any spare parts or anything. Everything is already well taken care of well in advance. It's amazing to see how a sport as big as this and as complicated as this manages to transport itself all around the world year after year. You know, that's a good point. We need an onboard with Bottas in that Ricciardo incident. I don't recall seeing a lockup on the car of Bottas. Again, we'll need to see it again. But the contact in both cases, you could make an argument that both cases were incidental. You could also make an argument that both cases were just out of sheer misjudgment on the case of Valtteri Bottas, particularly the incident with Vettel. Bottas on the extreme inside line for turn 2. He knows that he's going to have a much harder time getting it turned into that corner, and he drives into a wedge that isn't there. Seeing in replay now the Sky Sports feed on board with Vettel, getting that over-under move and better drive out of turn 1 than Bottas. Bottas on the extreme inside, aiming straight at the apex for turn 2 in the braking zone. Vettel is on the racing line. He's entitled to keep it. That wedge, that gap between the side of the track and the car of Sebastian Vettel is always going to disappear. Bottas at this point, powerless to do anything to get the car turned in or stopped in time. Vettel swoops over to the left to take the racing line. Bottas very hard over those apex curbs, which really aren't meant to be run, it must be said. And, yep, into the back of the Ferrari. On board with Vettel through turn 2. There definitely was quite a bit of a jolt experienced by Sebastian Vettel there. Throws in some opposite lock to keep the car on line. Taking a look at that same incident now on board with Kimi Räikkönen, what did the Finn see? How much debris was thrown up in his face? A fair amount there. Nothing too consequential, though. Räikkönen very nearly getting Sebastian Vettel there through turn 2. Replay, Bottas and Ricciardo there. Bottas did have a slight lockup on the right front in the braking zone there through turn 1. Again, what do you say about that? I would say in the context of that incident by itself, you could say it's a racing incident. But in the context of what happened a couple laps prior with Sebastian Vettel, that was the second bit of appreciable contact on the part of Valtteri Bottas with another car. Looking at it in that context, I'm not so sure that the stewards will be lenient. Again, we'll have to wait and see. Hesitated I. I'm talking about the Ricciardo Bottas incident, not the Vettel Bottas incident. Sky Sports talking with Pierre Gasly. He certainly looks content with his result, P6 today. Norman Robinson, you'll be getting a highlight reel on YouTube, courtesy of Formula One, in probably about 2 hours' time. Takes him about that long to put all the footage together and get it uploaded. At this point, though, we have about a month between now and the next Grand Prix, coming to us from no place other than Spa-Francorchamps in Belgium, the Belgian Grand Prix, one of the highlights of the year for sure. Free Practice 1 gets underway in 25 days on Friday the 24th of August. Saturday, Free Practice 3 and qualifying, of course, following on the next day, August 25th. And Sunday, August 26th, race day in Belgium. Until then, we have quite a bit of a gap. Obviously, the teams will be taking that opportunity for some rest and recuperation, as well as some more development work. Formula One goes to Belgium next, and it all kicks off on Friday, the 24th of August. What does Bottas have to say? Valtteri Bottas there, blaming everybody but himself for those incidents. On the Vettel incident, he says that Sebastian just turned in very early. Valtteri, you are not on the racing line. You're right on the apex of the corner, and Seb was on the racing line, turning in where he's entitled to turn in. The incident with Ricciardo, again, he blames Ricciardo, saying, well, he must have seen that I was going very quickly, but he turned in on me anyway. Pal, you speared the thing up the inside. You were only ever going to hit him. Yes, looking forward to the Belgian Grand Prix. Well, first of all, it's an engine circuit. It's rewarding to strong engines, but it also is very hard on engines. I don't know what the exact figure is, but well over 50% of the lap is spent at full throttle, so it is an engine killer. Also, Spa has the most elevation change of any circuit on the calendar, and most of that elevation change actually happens through one corner complex, the Eau Rouge and Rédillon complex there at the beginning of the lap. Probably the most well-known corner in all of Formula One. About 180, 190 feet of vertical elevation there, and the cars go through it in about half a second. So it's very harsh on the engines, very harsh on the gearboxes and chassis as well. Again, Spa, it's an absolutely legendary circuit. Great racing always there, and of course, great pictures. You know, I agree. Ricciardo gave Bottas all kinds of room, and Bottas just kept steaming in at full clip. Again, we'll have to wait and see what the stewards say. They can see all the same replays that we can, so, well, we shall see. Max Verstappen there talking about the psychological impact of the summer break. He says, I hate it. People say bad luck and now enjoy your holiday. So Verstappen definitely will have been left wanting more today. Again, retirement with an apparent KERS failure, MGUK failure. Yes, definitely lots of sim action will be taking place at Spa over the next month in a build-up to the Belgian Grand Prix. We've got a lot of time to get ready for it, so yes, you sim racers out there, get acquainted with Spa. Also coming up, not during the summer break, but on the Belgian Grand Prix weekend, we're going to have the release of the Formula 1 2018 video game from Codemasters. So I'm sure many of you have already pre-ordered, but that's going to be coming out over the Belgian Grand Prix weekend. Of course, here at Ferrariman601, we'll be taking a look at F1 2018 when we get it. Beta 458 asking me to review the Ferrari 458. Well, I've been considering it. I've been considering reviewing several road cars, actually. I tend to do open wheelers for the most part. I want to move away from that a little bit. We do have one open wheeler in particular that warrants a review, the SF71H Ferrari by Assetto Corsa Racer over on Facebook. Join the Assetto Corsa Racer Facebook group if you are on Facebook, and you'll be able to download that mod. It's fantastic, and it's still going through a couple iterations of updates, so being worked on still by the guys over there, but it's really quick, and you'll be seeing some more content of that in the coming days. But yes, I do want to do some more road car reviews. I just did the Nissan GTR. Not quite a review of the car in as much as it is a critique of Nissan's design philosophy, but that one's out there. Obviously, we had the miraculous Ford Transit come out last week, and having a lot of fun with that as well. But yeah, some more road car reviews I'd like to do coming up. And also, we do have to take a look at the SF71H. Anyway, for the record, fastest lap of the race, Daniel Ricciardo 120.012. He also gets driver of the day, I do believe. At this point, though, we do have to say goodbye from Hungary. I do thank you all very, very much for joining me. Last live stream for a bit, at least as far as Formula 1 coverage is concerned. Those of you who are still looking for your racing fix, though, we do have NASCAR action from Pocono Speedway in Long Pond, Pennsylvania, a little bit later on today. And we also do have some IndyCar action coming your way this weekend from Mid-Ohio. So there is still some more racing to be consumed if you are a little bit more in the American persuasion particularly. So still some more racing action to be seen today. However, Formula 1 has concluded for about the next month, but it is worth the wait. The Belgian Grand Prix is next. Until next time, though, Ferrariman601 saying thank you very much for joining me today, and of course, we will see you soon. Thank you, guys.